So this is going to be a pretty quick how-to on getting a Dell PowerEdge server booted with 0OS. It's quite a bit easier than an HP server, really. there's just less steps than an HP, so that is a pro over HP server. They're also a lot quieter, so if you have to put them in a living room, you pretty much have to go with a Dell over an HP. But besides those two things, both of them work great. Just a few differences in setting them up. A quick brief on models. You're going to want either a 620, which is the 1U, or a 720, which is the 2U at the absolute oldest. Don't go older than that, or you're going to be limited to 6-core CPUs and inefficient CPUs. Yes, I do have one, but only because it was very cheap. Just like in the last video, I'm going to be using the remote management to interact with the server. In Dell's case, it is IDRAC, not ILO. If you already have your IP address, which you can find with an advanced IP scanner, the login does have a default login, unlike the HPs. It is root and then Calvin with a C. So you can see it's pretty similar to ILO. The first and really only two things you're going to need to do in here are update ILO, or I guess we're in IDRAC, update IDRAC and BIOS. You don't have to do any special configuration or special update to run those V2 CPUs. Just updating your BIOS will do that. And setting up your RAID card to do HPA mode is also quite a bit easier. So downloading the updates on the PowerEdge support site, you have drivers and downloads. You do category, BIOS, and you download this, and it's an executable. You run the executable and hit extract, not install. And you also have your IDRAC. It'll be this one here, which you will download, run, and extract as well. It outputs a lot of files, so you should extract them into a named folder like I did here. So back at IDRAC, took me a second to find what I was looking for. So back in IDRAC, under overview, IDRAC settings, update and rollback is where you're going to upload your update files. So if we're doing IDRAC first, this is everything that comes out of there. You go under payload and attach this .d7 file. For BIOS, you go under payload and upload this HDR file. It's fortunately I don't have a Dell server. I haven't updated yet, so I can't actually show you doing it like I did with the HP, but it's fairly simple there. I'm going to show you my BIOS settings now, because this 720 is, at least mine, rather finicky with its boot. Definitely was the hardest one I had to set up. A lot of combinations of settings did not work. So we're going to go under Virtual Console. It could probably easier or simpler just to do this through your monitor, but this is easier to record. So you need to download Java and install it on your computer before you can do this. And when you hit Launch Virtual Console here, you'll get a download here, and you'll open up that download. You know what it is? I think I might have to re-download Virtual Console. Yes, there it is. So weird. So we're going to hit F2. So if up to this point you've been running on a monitor because you haven't been able to get your IDRAC IP, now's your chance to change that. We'll hit IDRAC settings, network, and you see I have I have DHCP enabled. Now in system BIOS, we'll go to processor settings. Logical processor is enabled. Boot settings. We have BIOS. Boot sequence retry enabled. Under BIOS boot settings, you'll have to make sure hard drive is checked. And here it should say USB flash disk. Finally, under system security, AC power recovery is set to on. This will power on in the event of a power loss. When you're booting through BIOS for the first time, chances are you have a pre-existing RAID configuration, and it will hang during boot here, asking you to continue or reconfigure. I can't replicate that because I have already fixed it, but when you hit, I think, C to configure, you can remove the old configuration. It's very intuitive, and you only have to do it once. If you don't reconfigure, it will not go through BIOS and boot without any input from you, which is not optimal. If you're looking to run or install disks directly in the front bays of your Dell server, it's quite a bit easier to do than on an HP, thanks to this program that someone has made. It completely reflashes your existing RAID card with different firmware. I could go through it, but the documentation along with this program is very well done, and you won't have any trouble doing it because it's so well written. Just a few tips on things that you could possibly screw up is pay very close attention to the name of your RAID device. It's all in here. The first step that you do is you find out the model of your RAID. I almost, for some reason, ignored the P after my H710, and I almost ran this one, and it would totally have bricked it. So just pay very close attention to what you're doing. Everything has to match verbatim. If it doesn't match verbatim, don't do it in regards to the RAID model. I also did not bother with any of these extra / optional steps, so I don't think you will have to either. I think you will need at least 1 or 2 USB drives or SD cards to run all this. And to wrap up, I'll go over some of the nuances on the types of booting images that the Dell 720s and 620s like. I had no luck booting the EFI images at all. If you do have a CD drive, the ISO will probably work. On my 715, I actually was not able to get the ISO image to recognize I had a network card, so I could not use it. This is here, the second to last image is the one you're going to want, the DD image. Use Belina Etcher or Rufus to write this. Some notes on the booting medium. If you write to a flash drive, I had some trouble with that. Sometimes I'd have to wait 15 minutes for the server to recognize it. However, I'm going to cut right here to a little video I shot showing how the SD card reader is extremely hidden. That actually gave me quite a run for my money because my server was booting into an operating system and I could not figure out why, because I could not find the hidden SD card on my used server. I have no problem at all booting from an SD card, so if you have the card reader in there, definitely go for it. Otherwise, you can use the USB and maybe yours will boot faster than mine. So that's it for getting a Dell up and running. This video is pretty short because I didn't actually show you how to do it because I don't have an updated one. If you have any questions on getting them booted though, just shoot me a comment below and I will have the links to the BIOS downloads and the reflashing software below.